And it reminded me of something that Michael Manley said. He said, "There is no greater dignity than that of being able to control your destiny." And that's something that this person also preaches. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Leader of the Opposition and President of the People's National Party, Mr. Mark Golding.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to gratefully adopt the protocols that have already been observed, but just to specifically recognize Prime Minister Mia Mottley, former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson, and former party leader and Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips. I wish to begin firstly by welcoming the Honourable Prime Minister Mia Mottley to Jamaica and thanking her for agreeing and taking the time to visit us to deliver this much anticipated lecture. And also by congratulating Senator Donna Scott Mottley and the Michael Manley Foundation and other organizers of this wonderful occasion in honor of Michael Manley on the 100th anniversary of his birth. As the current president of the People's National Party, I stand on the shoulders of the 5 leaders who came before me. I am fortunate to have had a personal relationship with 4 of them, the first of those being Michael Manley, who I initially got to know when, as a teenager in the early 1980s, I was friendly with his then-wife Beverly's niece and was a regular visitor to their home on Washington Close. Long ago. We later renewed our relationship in the 1990s when he, having just retired from politics, was the principal consultant on the Government of Jamaica's Employee Share Ownership ESOP program, a program which he had spearheaded before his retirement and remained passionate and committed to, while I was involved in the legal work to develop the ESOP legislation. That happenstance meant that we met at least once a month on his veranda at Heathwood to discuss the ESOP program, but invariably the conversation would end up drifting into current affairs as he would exhort young persons of my generation, like me at the time, to get involved in the political life and development of our country. I would never have imagined then that one day I'd be giving remarks in the capacity as leader of the PNP at a lecture in his honor. There is no doubt that Michael Manley was a most consequential Caribbean political leader. He was truly a Jamaican Renaissance man, a passionate intellectual with a wide range of interests, including a deep love of sports, art, and music. His oratory and charm were unparalleled, and I believe it's safe to say that he is the most loved political leader Jamaica has produced. And with the benefit of hindsight, he's increasingly recognized as a visionary leader whose ideas for creating a more fair and just society out of the cauldron of our colonial experience were often before their time. Michael Manley was courageous. He recognized that incremental adjustments to the status quo would not meet the needs and expectations of the majority of Jamaicans. And he was always willing to take bold steps towards the positive transformation of the society and indeed the world. from lying down in the road as a trade union leader in furtherance of the JBC workers' protest, to standing up to Henry Kissinger and our mighty neighbor to the north on a matter of principle when pressured to abandon Cuba in its military support of the liberation struggle of the Angolan people against the invasion of the apartheid regime in South Africa. Michael was courageous. During his first period as Prime Minister from 1972 to 1980, Michael's policies and programs were developed through a democratic socialist ideological lens. This necessitated far-reaching changes to Jamaica's economy and society, which, a decade after political independence, had continued to be structured along strict classist and race-configured colonial norms. Over the course of those 8 years, Jamaica was deeply transformed in profound ways never attempted, much less achieved, either before or since. In support of the rights and interests of workers, of women, of children born out of wedlock, and so much more. The influence of Michael's thought and mission reverberated across the region and made him a towering third world figure on the world stage as he advocated relentlessly for the emergence of a new international economic order based on principles of equity, which would provide a more level playing field for post-colonial economies in trade, finance, and overall development. In the second half of the 1970s, the backlash to this transformation that was instigated by the political representatives of the privileged status quo in Jamaica, aided by their external Cold War backers, was relentless and severe, resulting in a concerted propaganda war against his government and the intensification of political violence as a tool of destabilization, ultimately resulting in the bloody 1980 general election defeat of the People's National Party. While a lot has been said and written about aspects of that period of our history, much of what took place has remained untold other than in private conversations. Such is the vestigial, unresolved impact of that era on the nation's consciousness. While that 8-year-old period of Michael Manley's career in government generally attracts the most attention and is often viewed nostalgically as the heyday of progressive achievement in Jamaica, his second period as Prime Minister from 1989 to 1992 was also very consequential. In fact, certainly in terms of economics, the latter period had a more lasting impact than the first. Part 2 of Michael Manley in government established the basic economic model that Jamaica has been pursuing for the last 40 years. He recognized the essential role of business in driving economic growth and rapidly liberalized the economy through removing exchange controls, eliminating price controls, and substantially getting rid of the licensing regimes for imports and exports. All this was in keeping with the economic orthodoxy which emerged as dominant in the post-Cold War era and was done with the strong encouragement of the leaders of the private sector of the time. However, these were fundamental economic changes, and it took Jamaica quite some time to adjust and learn the fundamental rules and techniques of managing a small, open economy, but learn we did over the following decades. I would therefore argue that the seeds that have ultimately led to the last decade's dramatic public debt reduction and other macro-fiscal successes for which Jamaica is now internationally recognized were sown by Michael Manley's bold reforms that created the basic economic model which is now generally regarded as uncontroversial. The unresolved challenge that we face as a nation now is how to move from macro-fiscal stability to inclusive, sustainable development that works for all. There is much in the teachings of Michael Manley, thankfully committed by him to writing in his many books and recorded speeches, that remain relevant to the task at hand. However, we are now faced with a world which is very different to that which Michael strode as a third world colossus. A new wave of right-wing leadership is emerging across Western democracies as diverse demographic groups such as minorities, young men, and disgruntled and alienated working class persons reject the placid complacency and self-righteousness of mature Western liberalism. This is happening even as the economic balance of power shifts eastward to China and India, and the phenomenon of BRICS begins to emerge with alternatives to the post-World War II structures which have underpinned Western dominance in global finance and trade. Amidst all these uncertainties and risks, the principles of social justice and equality of access to opportunity, which Michael Manley steadfastly championed like no other throughout his life, must remain our guide as we seek for solutions in a very different era of the politics of change, and renew the search for solutions which are pragmatic but principled responses to the deep, unresolved challenges of our time. Happily, a towering Caribbean statesperson has emerged. The inspirational Caribbean leader of this era, who is with us this afternoon. Mia Mottley has been relentless and uncompromising in her international advocacy for justice and equity in the global response to the climate crisis, and for fundamental changes to the international financial system to enable small countries like ours to survive and hopefully thrive. In this regard, Mia has manifestly inherited and assumed the mantle of Michael Manley. No doubt, drawing inspiration from him as she boldly takes on the powerful vested interests of international capitalism, the international system that desperately needs fundamental change in the face of the existential threats facing the globe. So, we are truly blessed. It is absolutely fitting to have Mia here with us on this occasion. And so I close by joyously proclaiming, from Michael to Mia to the world.